Hello everyone, welcome to my review and discussion of what I consider to be the most groundbreaking shmup port of all time, only rivaled by the later releases of Ketsui Destiny or Battle Garega Revision 2016 by the M2 Shot Triggers team, but before them we had Dodonpachi DaiOuJou for the PlayStation 2 by Arika. And in this video I not only want to discuss why this specific release is so excellent and why I consider it an all-time classic and essential purchase, but also what elements come together to make a quality shmup port, because I think this has been a long source of confusion and discussion when it comes to my shmup reviews on this channel, because a lot of people I think sort of have the idea that as long as the underlying game itself is good, then the port is good as well. This was a big issue when the Zero Div Psycho ports came out, because yes, the underlying games are fantastic, but the job that Zero Div did to bring those games to consoles, not so much. Same thing with the Cotton 2 release that just came out, where yes, Cotton 2 is a very cool game, but when you have 11 frames of input lag, that's a problem. But rather than just setting up constant bad examples, I thought it'd be great to discuss a shining example of what makes a port so excellent, and there's no better case than Dodonpachi DaiOuJou on the freaking PlayStation 2 that's many years old. So let's begin by talking about this game specifically and the team behind it, because it's actually pretty crazy. So when Arika were working on this port, they had an all-star cast of people on board. They had three world-class super players of Dodonpachi working on this sequel port. They had Laos, they had NAL, and they had Clover TAC. Now for big Dodonpachi fans, like if you've seen my Dodonpachi Bible, you might recognize those names, but even if you're not a big Dodonpachi fan, you might recognize the last name, Clover TAC, who went on to creating Crimson Clover World Ignition or World Explosion now. So yes, the team behind this game was absolutely insane, and if you read interviews during the time, they basically had 3 super players going at this game night and day to make sure it was accurate, to make sure that the slowdown worked correctly, that it felt right. So they're nailing all those elements that typically get looked over: slowdown accuracy, input lag. And then they went ahead of just doing that. They also included a ton of features that if you're just the average player or just the average developer, you may not think of being as useful. But if you are a fan of the Dodonpachi series, or if you're a fan of bullet hell, you know that these are great inclusions that should be a little bit more of a standard these days, especially since this came out again on the freaking PlayStation 2. There's been plenty of time to learn these lessons. So let's talk about what features are specifically excellent on this DOJ port. The first feature that definitely comes to mind is the simulation mode, which is beefed up training mode basically. So again, many ports these days struggle to even include a basic stage select. Again, Zero Div Psycho ports don't have this. And not only does this simulation mode have a stage select, but it goes above and beyond with many other different features, such as being able to choose your power-up level, being able to select the boss or the stage first, being able to manipulate your rank, being able to manipulate your hyper count, being able to adjust all these little parameters to make sure that you're able to reproduce your routing as close as you can without having to use save states, because save stating on the PS2, that's not a thing. This is a true port. It is an emulation, so they're not going to be able to do that. I think these are all notes that indie developers should be keeping an eye on, because even though you can't bring full-on save states most likely, still having a very strong training mode, or in this case simulation mode, is a huge step forward. So simulation mode is a great starting point, but there's actually much more to this port than just that. The second mode of the game that I think gets looked over a lot is the no bullet mode, and I think again this is something that only a real true fan of Dodonpachi would come up with, because basically what no bullet mode is a mode where you can practice your chaining and practice different chaining routes without having to worry about getting around bullets and having to worry about managing the screen. You can just really sit down and analyze how these links come together, how to time your links. And so in the days before save states were really a thing, I think this is a great way for people to practice training, and I think myself would probably enjoy using it, even though I can use save states in emulators and all that sort of stuff. So the no bullet mode, if you're ever wondering what that was all about. Another thing that's really cool about this port is that you can submit your high scores to a website, it seems, Again, these are the days before the PlayStation 2. Well, I guess the PlayStation 2 could connect to the internet, but that really wasn't a thing that many games did, especially smaller releases like this. So instead, what you're able to do is you get your high score, and then it gives you a code. Then you can plug in the code, I'm assuming, into their website, which is really cool idea. And again, another great idea for indie developers, where I remember Trap with Firelancer did something like this, where he had QR codes, and you could scan the QR codes and then go into a website. So if you don't want to do the full-on server-style stuff, maybe having this workaround for your indie shmup could be a cool idea. It's also kind of fun. And another really important thing that they included is the ability to rotate tate, which makes sense, but also being able to play in 240p. This is one of the shmup ports that's really well known for its excellent screen options, because not only can you play rotated, but you also can adjust to playing in 240p rather than playing in 480i, which makes this PS2 port specifically valuable, because if you're playing on like the Xbox 360, you can get to 480p, then maybe through an Extron get down to 240p. But if you want 240p straight out of the console, so the video options are awesome. And then, of course, the famous Death Label mode. For those who are not aware, Death Label was a mode strictly for the shmup homies, basically. For the super players' friends, I'm assuming, because this mode is absolutely insane. Even more insane than, I would say, something like an Ultra mode, because there is no downtime, there is no easing your way into it, and it's kind of a little bit for the memes, I feel a little bit too. And after Death Label mode came out, I'll show some footage of me struggling my way through the first 3 stages of Death Label mode, which is a glorified boss rush. Though, once you get to the end, you end up fighting like double hibachis and all this sort of stuff. And from what I understand, it took 7 years of super players going at this mode for someone to be able to conquer it, who was MON. And that replay, I think, is an all-time classic. I think in your YouTube browser, you should bookmark it just for everyday inspiration. And it's such a fun clear to watch, and it took the dude 7 years to get through it. So all things together, this port has a lot going for it. But being the beast that it isn't finished, because there is a really, really overlooked aspect of this port that I find really cool, and I wish more ports would do, which is, of course, you're able to do replays, which is really nice, especially since you're on the PlayStation 2. Being able to do replays goes a long way. But the thing about the replays feature that is really cool is you can take over the replay as it's playing, and they actually include this kind of crazy super play of, I think they're using laser or shot type, they're not using the expert type. And not only can you sit and watch the replay, which is really useful for gathering footage, but you can also take over it and just start playing, which I think is very cool, and I wish more shmup replay systems would do this. I don't believe the M2 Shot Triggers ports allow you to do this, though I could double check that, but that is a very cool feature and just really fun as well. So everything about this port, it's just bringing a ton to the table. But if that wasn't enough, it also includes a really amazing Superplay DVD that you can pop in and watch. Just to warn you though, this Superplay DVD is incredibly hard to get running on something other than a Japanese PS2 or a hacked PS2. I have tried playing this thing on everything that I can think of course, my DVD player, no go, my Xbox, no go, my modded PlayStation 3. I thought this would be the winner because I can change the region of my PlayStation 3, so I swapped my PlayStation 3 over to the Japanese region. Still, it was like, no. So I'm pretty sure if you want to watch this DVD, you either have to like hack it by putting into, your computer and ripping it and then like hacking the region locking or whatever you need to do there, or playing it on like your modded PlayStation 2. So you're not going to see a whole lot of footage of the Superplay DVD because my PlayStation 2 disc drive is actually busted, so I can't use my disc drive on my PlayStation 2. So in the meantime, just use your imagination. Though in the future, I do plan to rip this and put this like unlisted on the channel or somewhere so people can watch it in higher quality. There is versions of it you can watch, but they're like in 480p. I think it deserves some upscaling and some sharpening because it is a fantastic replay. So this thing just has it all going for it. I can't commend it enough. And what's crazy is that if you're a fan of playing them on the original hardware and you're a fan of owning the original discs, which for people who know my channel, that's not really a thing I care about all that much. But this one is one that I actually went out of my way to purchase because it is so excellent. And also because it is one of the few shmup ports out right now that isn't, shh, don't tell anyone, it isn't crazy expensive. It's only like 70 bucks. It's not $300 million as opposed to the Xbox 360 port. But to end this video, I do want to mention one quick criticism of this port, then also just compare it really quickly to the Xbox 360 port, because I think a lot of people have questions on that. And I don't think I'm going to do a full-on video on the Xbox 360 port anytime soon. But basically, the biggest criticism of this port is that it does not include Black Label. It is only White Label. There is no Black Label on the port. It is only White Label. And White Label is badass, so if you're a fan of White Label, this is going to get you through. But if you want to play Black Label, the port's not going to do you any good because it's not on here. And the crazy thing is that Black Label had come out before the port was completed, and I'm guessing during the porting developing process. And so it is a little bit of a weird oversight when they're so thorough with everything else and making Death Label mode that they didn't include Black Label mode. But I do have a theory on why it doesn't have Black Label mode, which is reading an interview with Arika at the time. He basically came up with Black Label mode as a sort of scoring competition mode and wasn't really thinking of it as a full-on release. You know, it's kind of like the Black Label, I guess, was going to be like the campaign mode of Dodonpachi, right? It was going to be a sort of scoring, fun, for the fans type of mode that only 5 people on Earth would play. But when he showed it to the higher ups, they're like, no, let's just put this on the board. Let's make this a real thing. So I'm guessing what happened, this is just my theory, game theory, is that while they were developing it, he's like, don't bother with Black Label mode. That's just going to be a fun little extra. Not knowing until later on that, oh, wait, it ended up being like the definitive version of the game. So that is the biggest disappointing factor of this release. There is no Black Label mode. And I think this is why the Black Label mode came out for the 360 port. However, the 360 port is not nearly as good, even though it tries to be. So the 360 port is infamous for a few things. The first one being is that it is literally like stolen code from the PS2 port. That's why the load times are so long and it's so janky, because they basically tried to just shove the PS2 code into the 360 version with some, I'm guessing, some hot glue and tape. And it didn't really work out all that well. And then years and years later, they patched it. So you can get a patch for the 360 port, which improves some stuff, but it doesn't improve everything. The first thing that it doesn't improve is the visual filter, whatever's going on. It has some kind of weird filter on the 360 port that looks like garbage. It looks like someone smeared Vaseline on your screen. It's just ugly. No matter what you do, no matter how high you put your video settings, that ugly filter is just stuck on top of it, unless someone hacks it or something. Until that point, though, the 360 port looks like garbage. It also just kind of plays a little bit funny. It's a little bit inaccurate as far as the slowdown and stuff. Not too bad, but a little bit. And just the way the ship moves and feels, it just feels a little bit off, a little bit jank. Now, it isn't awful. It isn't like Cotton 2, throw it in the garbage type of thing, but it isn't great either. The PS2 port is just so much better. The problem is someone, I'm not saying who, M2 Shot Triggers, should probably once and for all bring the elements together and bring it onto something like a PlayStation 4 with a final definitive port of what I consider to be the greatest shmup of all time. They got Ketsui on there. Come on, follow through, finish it off with DOJ, the definitive version, putting everything all together. Black Label, the international version, White Label, Death Label mode with save states, maybe a new arrange just because you're cool like that. And so this is my discussion and review of Dodonpachi DaiOuJou for the PS2. One of the most important shmup ports of all time. I couldn't recommend it enough. And so if you're a fan of the channel, please like, subscribe, and get yourself notified. And I want to emphasize getting yourself notified, because right now what's going on is YouTube is sending out a little letter to all the YouTubers saying, hey, make shorts and we might give you some kind of bonus or something. So that's why your subscription feeds are getting completely covered in shorts and all these little short videos coming out. And so it's kind of drowning out my regular uploads, I think. So if you can get yourself notified so I can kind of poke through, that would be really fantastic. And also check out the Reddit, the Electric Underground Reddit. There's going to be some cool stuff coming up on there soon. I'm just giving you a little hint. So you might want to get on there because it might be something kind of important. So yes, thanks so much for tuning in. Adios, everyone. So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, Ukshay Wadker, Dingo, Another Joe, Anthony A, Anthony Iodice, Aaron Solis, Ben, Borgie22, Brian Reboot, Brian Shiver, Chris Yuzefovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Danielle Savage, Darren Griffin, Delta Tango 6, Disco Staslea, DJ 420 Praise It, Dubs, Entropy, Eric H, FCK, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Geriatric, Danmaku, Hausu, Ilya, Kiwi, JLab, JB RPG, Joe Angelo, John Kelly, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, Kikoman 589, Larridge, Malaise, Mark Toms, Matthew Ebersviller, Maz, Megadeth 859, Minung, Mechalin, Mitchell Y, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Kugels, Philip Mason, Portal 63, Rattlecat, Raul, Real Skeen, Shane Sintiensky, SLW, The Boot Rex, The Real Ikuzo, The Old Bensta, TRM, Zugumo, Plasmo, Twilight EX, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.